Hey y'all, Corey here with Ensemble Texas, and in this Texas Nature Journal entry, I want to introduce you to the Texas native, the Yaupon Holly. The Yaupon Holly is an evergreen Texas native shrub or small tree that's become one of the most commonly used plants in landscapes across the state, and for good reason. It's highly versatile, and it can withstand full sun, tolerate full shade, drought resistant, but also doesn't mind being occasionally flooded. It's also a great potential living fence. As an evergreen, it's going to keep its leaves throughout the year, and female plants like I have right here are going to fill out even further as they produce bright red berries late summer through fall, hold them through winter. Those berries are toxic to humans, but are a valuable food source in the late winter for wildlife. The Yaupon Holly has leaves that can be used to make tea, and it is the only plant in its region known to contain caffeine. It can be planted and maintained as a specimen small tree that would require some heavy pruning to make that shape, or if it's left to its own devices, you can see it become a bit more shrubby, dense, but it will create a substantial amount of privacy. So you might hear the Yaupon Holly also referred to as just the Yaupon. Its Latin name is Ilex Vomitoria. It's rarely getting taller than 25 feet, said to have the potential to get up to 45 feet tall, which seems quite remarkable, but most often people report it gets about 12 to 25 feet in height. Again, speaking to its versatility, it can handle moist soils, well-draining drier soils, sandy, loamy, clay, limestone, or gravelly soils. Doesn't mind poorly draining spots and can tolerate the occasional flooding. For water use, it can tolerate drought, but also, as mentioned, it can handle more moist conditions as it's oriented more towards eastern Texas areas with greater levels of rainfall. Where is the Yaupon Holly native? The Yaupon Holly grows throughout the southeastern US, up to Virginia, down through east central Texas. It is found in wooded bottomlands or wooded canyons, and it's described to be found almost everywhere in East Texas. When it comes to Central Texas, more commonly it will be found around creeks and streams, given the overall drier environment. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of having the Yaupon Holly in your landscape. I think first, most importantly, it can be a living fence. The Yaupon Holly is often used as a hedge. It's also a great potential living fence, as it can grow pretty dense and it will retain its leaves throughout the year as an evergreen. Second, I think you have to talk about its versatility. You can plant a Yaupon Holly just about everywhere. It can handle full sun to full shade, moist to dry soils. That is probably why it's become a very commonly used native plant by landscapers throughout the state of Texas. The Yaupon Holly also is a wildlife attractant shrub. Berries are a food source for wildlife in late winter, and the nectar of the flowers attracts particular insects, and it's a great nesting tree given the density of its growth. And so further along those lines, the benefits for wildlife, again, it's a food source. The fruits are eaten by various birds, bobwhites, doves, robins, cedar waxwings, bluebirds, jays, and mockingbirds, as well squirrels, possums, rabbits, and foxes eat the berries as well. However, the fruits aren't typically eaten until late winter, when little else is available. And also, oddly, the fruit has potentially fermented at this point. I'm interested to know how that's related. And then finally, it's a larval host for the Henry Elffin's butterfly. And most of the butterfly observations, at least from what I could research on iNaturalist, are made from February to April in Texas, peaking in March. So if you'd like to look out for the Henry Elffin's butterfly once you plant your own Yaupon Holly in your landscape. Okay, let's talk about where to plant a Yaupon Holly. I believe you should consider planting Yaupon Holly in your landscape based off of these particular component pieces. First and foremost, I think, is the function, where you might want a privacy screen. This should be the highest priority because a Yaupon Holly is a very versatile plant. So making the light and water requirements work for the Yaupon Holly shouldn't be that much of an issue. I've planted 2 Yaupon Hollies in our own landscape. One is a male plant planted within a basin designed to retain water runoff from our driveway, and the other that you're looking at here is, of course, a female plant, and that's intended ultimately to be a privacy screen between our back porch, our house where we live over there, and where I'm sitting here, a patio behind our guest house. So each is planted in variable conditions of sun, shade, and as well moisture. However, one thing important to consider relative to the privacy screening is that Yaupon Holly is known to be slow growing. So if you want this plant to offer you privacy, it might be worth investing in a larger size upon purchasing. Moisture points in the landscape. So this is another virtue, I think, of the Yaupon Holly. It doesn't mind occasional flooding. So if you need privacy and there's somewhere that a lot of water accumulates or passes through, perhaps off of a gutter, downspout, or near runoff somewhere on your landscape, don't hesitate to plant the Yaupon Holly there. Also, I think shade to partial shade in the understory. The Yaupon can get quite dense and grow large to fill in gaps in your understory. So maybe, as you can see behind me by the multiple trunks here, we have a mature Anaqua tree that we love quite a bit, but it still leaves a big gap here on the understory of what would be some potential privacy or density in this space between ourselves and our guest house. So we want to fill in that gap, and we forecast that this Yaupon Holly can serve that potential purpose, with no issue being beneath a mature, larger kind of canopy style tree as the Anaqua is. But very important to note that you need to plant multiple Yaupon Hollies if you do want to get the berries, and I'd advise you do for the sake of the wildlife benefit, and I think it as well adds a little bit more visual interest to the plant itself. Because the male and female flowers are on separate plants, female plants are the only ones to bear the fruit, you need to have both in the landscape to make sure that the female plants are pollinated. From what I hear, they don't need to be too close to each other, and pollinators should help do the work for you once you have them established in your space. All right, care and maintenance. So to get the effect of a tree, considerable pruning efforts are going to be required. Although the Yaupon has been known to tolerate this very well, otherwise it will appear more shrub-like. You'll see if we didn't touch this one, here this Yaupon Holly, that's how this is going to grow. We're not going to grow it like a tree, we're going to grow it like a shrub. And so, we'll be considerate of pruning for the sake of what other plants in this garden area here that this encroaches upon, or as well maybe the physical structure of this house here. But you can prune heavily in later winter, and again, the Yaupon is known to tolerate heavy pruning quite well. If you don't mind more of a wild shrub like we won't ourselves here, then you can leave it be. Again, as I said, it can be up to your own discretion for the sake of shaping and what sort of other goals and objectives you have in your landscape. There's a long list of potential companions to the Yaupon Holly. You can plant it with a possum haw holly from the same family. Very similar, but the possum haw is deciduous, so it's gonna lose its leaves each winter. If you don't know what you're looking at, a Yaupon or a possum haw, at least when you're not during the winter and have already experienced the leaf fall, pull off a leaf from either one and bend it to tell the difference between a Yaupon holly and a possum haw holly. The Yaupon holly leaf will break before it bends completely, while the possum haw will remain intact given its greater flexibility. The Yaupon holly is also said to partner well with Carolina buckthorn, spicebush, American beautyberry, pigeonberry, Turk's cap, agarita, Mexican buckeye, and a few others, which we list in our complimentary post at ensembletexas.com. So season to season, what to expect. Starting in spring, tiny white flowers of the Yaupon Holly should begin to bloom in clusters. Come summer, the Yaupon continues to bloom throughout the summer, but as summer progresses, blooms will lead to fruits, the berries, if you have a female plant with a male plant nearby. Of course, fall comes, you should be starting to fill out. You'll see your Yaupon Hollies fill out with the bright red fruits. Male plants, not going to be much change. And starting, as early as late summer, you'll start to see the fruits. By the end of fall, should be pretty filled out with the fruiting for that season. The amount of fruit will definitely vary based off of the conditions your female Yaupon Holly is planted in. Greater sun, that's why I think it's important to find understory places where it still gets some sun. You'll get greater berry production, and that obviously will be a big boon for the wildlife in your area. And finally, winter, the Yaupon Holly is evergreen, so it will retain its leaves through the season, as well as the newly formed berries. They start to shrivel, kind of lose a bit of their complete shape and form. I'm seeing that a little bit right now. We're here in February in San Antonio, but the berries and the leaves will hold throughout the season, ultimately until the berries themselves are eaten or just will drop to the floor beneath them. One maybe a consideration for where you're planting your Yaupon Holly is where it might not be a big deal if you see berries dropping it, if you're a potential neat freak in that way, or have areas of your property that you don't want to have all that berry litter on. Of course, it's a freeze-hardy plant, so there's no concern for the Yaupon Holly's performance during a Texas hard freeze. Very important for me as far as, kind of off-season or winter season maintenance or lack thereof. As for medicinal or edible uses, again, very important to mention the fruits of the Yaupon Holly are highly toxic. They can be consumed by some mammals and birds, but not humans. The leaves are, however, where a Yaupon Holly gets interesting. They can be made into a highly caffeinated tea that resembles yerba mate. It's the only wild tea that contains caffeine in its native region. The leaves can be gathered young or old in any season and roasted to be later brewed like any other loose leaf tea. Yaupon also contains theobromine, which is a mood-boosting alkaloid also found in chocolate. Yaupon also appears to be very high in antioxidants and polyphenols. Let's talk propagation. Growing Yaupon Holly from cuttings seems to be the most promising, albeit still inconsistent means of propagating Yaupon Holly. It's recommended to take some semi-hardwood cuttings in late fall and apply rooting hormone and keep them intermittently under mist. Reportedly, folks will get maybe 50% success rate on this of having the cuttings root after 4 to 8 weeks. But Yaupon Holly is a very slow growing shrub, and so if this is something that you're wanting to grow yourself, be sure to be committed for the long haul here. All right, y'all, that's all for now in this entry of my Texas Nature Journal here on the Yaupon Holly. For more details and resources not mentioned directly in this video, I recommend that you check out our accompanying page at ensembletexas.com. That will be linked in the description below. And please don't hesitate to comment with your own experiences and observations and questions about using Yaupon Holly in your own landscape. Of course, I'm not claiming to be the utmost expert here. I just want to share with y'all my own experiences and learnings with these Texas native plants like Yaupon Holly. And so if there's something that you feel like I've gotten wrong, left out, important detail I should have shared, don't hesitate again to leave a comment below and add to a really valuable discussion with the greater Ensemble Texas community here. Finally, if you want to dive deeper into the world of Texas native plant landscaping, feel free to download our cheat sheet, Getting Started with Texas Native Plant Landscaping, by going to ensembletexas.com/freebies. Again, you can find that link in the description below, or go to ensembletexas.com/freebies. All right, y'all, until next time.